the Victims of Communism Memorial in July has inspired the Vietnamese diaspora to establish a day of prayer for victims of Vietnamese communism. Last July 7th, a number of Vietnamese Americans drove cross-country from Orange County, California to D.C. to join a large demonstration in front of the White House to protect the visit of CPV Secretary General Nguyen Phu Trong. After the protest, the group took advantage of its presence in D.C. to visit the Victims of Communism Memorial, which many of them have heard about. On this occasion, they performed a small prayer ceremony in the name of victims of Vietnamese communism, amounting to at least 6 million according to some well-informed sources. They were joined also by other Vietnamese Americans coming from Arkansas, Ohio, Iowa, Illinois, besides those coming from closer Virginia and Maryland. The idea of a day of prayer for victims of Vietnamese communism was floated on that day, and it met immediately with the approval from those present. Upon their return to California, Mr. Phan Qui Non, the eldest person among the group, discussed the idea in a series of meetings with the Interfaith Committee and the Vietnamese community of Southern California, who also gave their instant approval. The only matter that required some deliberation had to do with determining an appropriate date certain during the year for such a day of the prayer. Finally, the decision was made to pick the fourth weekend of the month of August, which this year falls on the Buddhist All Souls Day, when it is customary in the Vietnamese tradition to prepare food and pray for the peace of wandering souls. Despite the closeness of the date, several localities responded to the call of the Interfaith Committee and the Vietnamese community of Southern California to honor such a day starting this year, 40 years after the fall of South Vietnam. The main event was staged in Westminster, California at the Vietnamese American Memorial on the evening of Saturday, August 29, 2015. What is notable is that the event was attended by representatives from every faith known in the Vietnamese community, participants from most of the major organizations in the Vietnamese diaspora, including veterans of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Vietnam, and even Mayor Tri Ta of Westminster, California. Houston and D.C. were among other localities joining in the effort. And since Eastern Standard Time was 3 hours ahead of California, it was the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area which inaugurated the first Day of Prayer for Victims of Vietnamese Communism at 6 p.m. Saturday, August 29, 2015. Although the gathering was small, it was nonetheless joined by representatives of several faiths, including those from the Hoa Hao Buddhist and Cao Dai churches. Hopefully this movement will catch on so by that next year one can expect not only the diaspora around the world to commemorate this day, but also churches in Vietnam to join this meaningful event. On the occasion of this first Day of Prayer for Vietnamese Communism, Ms. Truong Anh Thuy, a well-known poet from Arlington, Virginia, was inspired to write a moving funeral oration translated by Professor Nguyen Ngoc Bich of the National Congress of Vietnamese Americans. Funeral Oration for Victims of Vietnamese Communism. Heavy the autumn sky with misty fog, leaves in the fall rustle in drafts. As a yellow sky stretches to the horizon, reminding one of so many rotten lives. Pity the wandering souls of victims of injustice, who roam the fatherland without a place to rest, with all the whole country being dug up to build entertainment houses and prostitution parlors. With so many years fighting 4-5 wars, the battlefields are now white with dry bones. Where are our heroes' resting places? In the city's rain? On top of grass and flowers? In the old military cemetery of the Republic, our soldiers thought they could have their rest eternal. Yet today it's abandoned and desolate, with broken walls, fallen statues, and mossy paths. As for the Communist People's Army troops, who sacrificed their blood and bones to unify the land, they must watch this bunch of rapacious despots sitting high on their thrones, enjoying their ill-gotten gains. Remember the days when earth and sky tumbled, yielding so many unjustly dead souls, whose laments and complaints reached the very heavens, whose suffering in the land reform cannot be forgotten. Then at that, the most sacred holiday of the year, the atheist communists launched their nationwide attacks. On the very first day in the year of the monkey, killing, chopping heads, and burying good people alive. Should anyone have a chance to go by Quang Tri, please remember the highways of horrors. As you can still hear even from the roadside trees, the crying of those mowed down by communist artillery. In 75, the land suddenly seethed with wild waves. As the communists threw everything they had into conquering the South, everything is lost, home and property, with people thrown in jail and boat people flooding the seas. Thrown in the vagaries of the ocean, of 10 people, 7 end up dead, leaving only 3. With tombs buried in the vast ocean, while only a few manage to wash ashore. Then you might come across some pitiable re-education camp inmates, treated most inhumanly by their communist wardens, where one would die of hunger, cold and exile, with not a torn mat to cover one's dead corpse buried in the grass. Innumerable are those undergoing unfair deaths, like those patriotic heroes fallen in the struggle, killed indiscriminately by the Vietnamese Communists, as sacrificial lambs to their Chinese and Soviet masters. Even talented and indomitable writers and artists have their pens and brushes taken away and bent. They get eliminated, persecuted, sent into exile. Their corpses may be buried, but they live on in people's memories. As today happens to be a good day, we come together in the 5 continents on earth to remember you, O wandering souls, asking that you all come around to hear us. We hereby burn incense to float in the 4 directions, and sincerely ask our ancestors to give fair judgment, and deliver these wandering souls from their injustices, so that these victims of communism can reach their abode. And from way above, in paradise or nirvana, they can in their holiness save us mankind, getting rid of this scourge known as communism, so the world can be one again, and in peace. Translated by NNB, Montreal, August 27, 2015.